Welcome to this special episode of The Switch. My name is Lindsay Otto, Marketing and Communications Specialist at Nonprofit HR, and I'm so excited about today's episode, where we will hear from 4 women named to Nonprofit HR's 2024 Social Impact Women to Watch list. Each year during Women's History Month, Nonprofit HR is proud to recognize women across North America who have made significant contributions to nonprofits, associations, foundations, social enterprises, and the communities they serve. This year, our Social Impact Women to Watch series features panel interviews with the 25 finalists named to this year's list. On today's episode, you will hear from Aisha T. Brown, Lysa Ratliff, Tanis Crosby, and Ying McGuire. They will be interviewed by Atokatha Ashmond Brew, Managing Director of Marketing and Strategic Communication at Nonprofit HR. And now a little about our guest. Aisha T. Brown is the Chief Financial Officer at the Thurgood Marshall College Fund. She oversees both operational and programmatic support of the organization and leads all aspects of the organization's finances. Lysa Ratliff is the CEO of KABOOM, the national nonprofit that works to end place-based inequity for good. Throughout her career, Ratliff has been a champion for kids and the protection of childhood, leading efforts to connect diverse partners to unite and make change for communities and kids across the country. Tanis Crosby is the Executive Director of the San Francisco-Marin Food Bank to end hunger with a commitment to equity, collaboration, and community. Joining the food bank in 2021, Tanis previously served as a leader in the YWCA movement for almost 20 years. Ying McGuire is the first Asian American CEO and president of the National Minority Supplier Development Council, America's most influential and successful minority business development organization that connects over 17,000 minority business enterprises with 1,700 corporate members. You are going to love this episode, and I welcome you to share it in your community. You can find this recording at nonprofithr.com/The Switch. Now, without further ado, let's dive into the conversation.
Well, hello again, everyone, and I am so excited to have this chat with our 4 finalists for Nonprofit HR's 2024 Social Impact Women to Watch list. We are blown away by the work that you all do each and every day, and the number of nominations that came in this year certainly reflects the level of excellence that we have consistently seen since we started this program over 7 years ago. I would love it if each of you could briefly introduce yourselves to our audience and just share a little of how it feels to have been named a finalist for 2024 Social Impact Women to Watch.
I'll jump right in. Thank you for that introduction. My name is Aisha Brown. I'm the Chief Financial Officer and Chief Operating Officer at the Thurgood Marshall College Fund. We are an organization that serves our students. We serve HBCU students and offer upskilling opportunities for them. But first, it is such an honor to be part of this panel today and to be named Woman to Watch. It highlights not only us as women leaders and the work that we all do here as panelists, but it also lifts up and impacts the work that we do in the spaces in which we serve.
Thank you, Aisha.
I'll jump in after Aisha. I'll just build off that because I want to echo her sentiments. I feel absolutely honored when I looked at the list of finalists. I was just blown away by the opportunity to be in such company. And so it means a lot, especially because I know we're all doing tough work. And so really thankful for this opportunity just to showcase what our passions and our commitments are. My personal passion in life is to leave the world better than I found it. And I'm able to manifest that through an organization that I lead called KABOOM, which is really focused on building vibrant communities and making sure our kids are happy and healthy. And we do that by bringing kids and community members together to build playgrounds. They design, and then we bring volunteers together to build playgrounds and making sure that they're everything that they need and so that they can benefit generations to come.
Thank you, Lysa.
I jump in. Ying McGuire, CEO and President of the National Minority Supplier Development Council, short for NMSDC. Our organization have been serving as the growth engine for NMSDC certified minority business enterprises and help our corporate members advance economic equity. And it's incredibly humbling to be listed as a woman to watch. And while I'm very grateful for the recognition, it is truly a reflection of the really dedication and timeless efforts of everyone at NMSDC. Really, our collective work is driving the growth for minority business enterprises we refer to as MBEs. And fostering the wealth in the communities. And the acknowledgement, though it's personal, really belongs to the entire team at NMSDC and whose hard work and commitment make such achievements possible. So my deepest thanks to Nonprofit HR for acknowledging not just my efforts, but the vital role of NMSDC. And congratulations to all my peer awardees. Thank you for your work.
Thank you, Ying.
I am so grateful to be here. My name is Tanis Crosby, and I'm already feeling inspired by women on this panel. So thank you for this honor. I serve as Executive Director for San Francisco-Marin Food Bank. Our mission is to end hunger, and our aim is to both address the consequences and the causes of hunger. We believe, and I believe, that hunger is a solvable problem, but only if we confront the root causes. And the root causes of hunger are not just insufficient food. The root causes of hunger are poverty and racism. So by naming those truths, we can confront the problem and we can solve it. And I come to this work with that resounding belief that we can solve big problems. I stand for equity, collaboration, and possibility for myself and all others. And I am proud to serve this mission with those values.
Oh, thank you so much, Tanis. Thank you to all of you. And again, congratulations. I know it's an incredible honor and a lot comes with it. And we're so excited to lift not only you up, but your organizations. Ying, thank you so much for lifting up your workforce at NMSDC. We know that all of your workforce is the wind beneath your wings, certainly in the C-suite. You need a lot of support to do what you do. And I really appreciate you acknowledging them and you all acknowledging one another. So a question I have is, what drew you all to your organization's work and the social sector in general?
I'll start. I have been involved with NMSDC actually since 2006 as a volunteer. I experienced all aspects of NMSDC as a key stakeholder, both as a corporate member and later on as a minority business enterprise, we call it MBEs. And also NMSDC, besides the national office, we have 23 regional affiliates, and I served as a board chair of one of those affiliates. And so during my involvement with NMSDC throughout the years, I came to have a deep-rooted understanding of and a passion for the mission of the organization. So it was developed over many years, and both when I was procurement leader and a supply diversity practitioner at Dell Technologies, where I actually helped bring the company to the billion-dollar roundtable, and when I was championing the advancement of MBE going global to mirror the corporate customers' global sourcing strategy during my time with Technology Integration Group, AMBE. And so that passion only grew in the wake of the murder of George Floyd and the outcry for greater racial justice that followed this national tragedy. So when I was given the opportunity to take the greater leadership role in this organization as the first AAPI CEO, I felt like I had found my new calling. So I transitioned from the tech industry to nonprofit. And also something that really drew me to NMSDC is the untapped economic potential the minority business owners can bring. When I first joined NMSDC, that was late 2021 and 2022, we conducted our minority business economic impact report. And the study found that NMSDC certified minority business enterprises were contributing about $261 billion in annual revenue. While this number was impressive, if you think about it, there's only little over 1% of our country's GDP, despite communities we serve. These businesses currently make up about 40% of our population. So as that statistic shows, there's a huge amount of potential for MBEs to contribute to the greater percentage of our U.S. economy, and which is why we have set called a BHAG goal, a big, hairy, audacious goal to raise NMSDC certified MBE revenue to 1 trillion. That is a 1T. And so growing our MBEs and creating greater wealth in our communities and the U.S. economy as a whole, it's really what drives me on a day-to-day basis.
I can jump in. I started out my career in corporate, and I did that because my upbringing taught me to figure out a way to get out of my environment. And then when I became a mom about 24 years ago, I realized that I wanted to use my life in a different way. And so I found myself in the nonprofit world and really trying to see how I can utilize my life for service. And along my nonprofit journey 8 years ago, I had heard of KABOOM, but I had not considered working there until it kind of came right to me. And the most important thing to me is, how do we care for our kids in a way that protects their childhood and protects and builds the greatest possible future that they can have? And at KABOOM, I saw a way to do that. KABOOM is really focused on both the kids and the caregivers. So you've got this organization that's doing this beautiful work to rally adults around prioritizing our babies and making sure that they have everything that they need. So you're caring for adults while centering our kids. And 8 years ago, I stepped into the organization knowing that my life had been built for it. And over the past 8 years have really just felt at the center of my purpose, so that I can continue to give whatever I have, so that whatever comes after me and after all of us is better than what we found.
Thank you, Lisa, for that. I was actually just sitting thinking, like, what you said is exactly what I was going to tap into. I think all of our careers are so deeply personal to what we do. People think of accountants and people who do numbers as just kind of transactional folks. And I think what I decided intentionally for my career was I going to stay corporate, or did I want to actually do something where I felt like my work made a difference in some small way or some big way? And I didn't know exactly that I would be here talking to the panel today or even be selected for an opportunity like that, so much as I knew that I wanted my work to make a difference. And so that's why I wanted to make sure that I was part of a mission-driven organization. And then somewhere along the way, I had kids, and it became just so deeply connected to my center. And I started with the Thurgood Marshall College Fund intentionally because education is key to how all of us will get here, to the key to our kids' future. I know that's an old adage that people say, but it really is so deeply true. Not only that, particularly for the Thurgood Marshall College Fund's mission, a lot of the communities of color, particularly our HBCU students, are underserved communities, or where post-secondary education wasn't even mentioned at home. And I've seen that even in my own family. And that was so deeply personal to me. And I remember when I interviewed with my now boss, the CEO, when asked the question, I said, I have the unique opportunity to choose the right mission, the right job to hitch my wagon to make a difference, because I know when I get here, I'm going to make sure that I'm dialed in. Since being here, what you understand is society has changed. We're expanding the aperture of what we're actually able to see in terms of the communities that our organization serves, the diversity space. What has been transformational is, in my role as not just CFO, as CEO, is lending my voice when I talk to students, being the example in the spaces that I'm in and conferences that I'm in, that I am in some way an example to the aspiring students that are trying to gain access to that professional space that I've been so fortunate to be. And that's been truly rewarding to be a part of this mission. So that is my story.
Tanis, would you like to add to that?
What I'm struck by when I hear all of your stories is just everyone's commitment to striving for something larger than ourselves, to be truly grounded in what we're doing, to have a calling and a pursuit that's really about who we are and what we want for our community. I came to the social impact work through activism, through wanting to fight injustice, through a deep desire of wanting change, and through a lived experience of feeling what it feels like to rely on our local church's food pantry to make ends meet in my family. When you have those experiences, it hardwires a desire in you. You want something more for your community, and you seek to express that every day in your labor, in your work, in your relationships. I'm paraphrasing somebody that I admire, a woman named Donna Garski, who said, we often come to this work with passion to fight against something, fighting injustice, fighting poverty, fighting racism, fighting gender inequity and violence. And then what keeps us in this movement, what keeps us in the work, is love. And what I'm also hearing from all of you, and it's certainly true for me, is the way in which you are lifting up others in your work, the way in which others have created mentorship and connection opportunities to support you in your career journey. So what keeps me in this sector, in the social impact sector, is definitely love and relationships. And what drew me to the sector was fighting for something that's possible.
You mentioned so much about your missions, and the people behind the work are, the ones who are creating that impact, right? And they need so much, especially in our nonprofits, which many times are operating without enough resources, many times without enough people, but with really, really big goals that are so important to society and the world in which we live. And so my question for you is, what is your people management philosophy when engaging mission-driven talent?
That's such a great question. I think you've got to lead from where you are. Every person in the organization is a leader, no matter what position they hold. So they're as passionate as I am leading the team. That being said, my philosophy personally is to be less transactional and more transformational when I lead, to foster an environment where accountability and empathy are systemic. And that is just really key to my management philosophy. My dad always told me that no matter where you are in life, everybody puts their pants on the same way in the morning. And I try to come to work with that same mentality with my teams.
Would you like to chime in here, Lysa?
The things that I would add to that, I feel really privileged to be in this place. And sometimes I think, gosh, how did I end up here? So it is, to me, a responsibility. And it's important for me to bring out the best in people, to create an environment where each individual's unique light can shine. So as Aisha was saying, right, every individual is a leader. And on top of that, every individual has something that nobody else has. No one else can do it that way. No one can give it that secret sauce the way that they can. Being able to create an environment that's safe for them to be able to let their light shine fully, I think is critical to leadership. And then the only other thing that I'll add to Aisha's poetry is that the why. I think it's important as a leader to make sure that we're all grounded on why are we doing this? Why is it so important? What is going to happen? Because I think if we understand the why, we can get rid of all of the obstacles. We can figure anything out if we know why it's important. And that, I think, is the quickest way to also get us on the same page.
I really feel like connecting into shared values, shared vision, and uncovering not only why our team is connected to doing this work, that uncovers possibilities. So I'm also hearing from all of us this deep appreciation for uncovering the solutions that we know that our team has.
Foremost, it is about building culture that attracts people with a passion for the work. And then once you have attracted the talent, the next step's really setting aspirational goals to stretch the imagination and ability of those in the organization. I'm very goal-oriented in my management style and in my life. Sometimes people can only see what they can see in front of them, which can limit their imagination and potential. So while I think setting attainable, easy, measurable goal is very, very important, I also always make sure to also set aspirational goals aimed at helping our people and the organization tap into some of the unrealized potential. So when I put $1 trillion goal on the whiteboard, people are like, that's not possible. But after a few years, we actually can see the possibility to reach $1 trillion goal. And the philosophy has paid off at NMSDC. Not only have we managed to continuously grow our certified MBE revenue by double-digit percentage in the last couple of years, but we also have seen many of our sponsorship dollars increase. The other thing I would like to touch on is how much attracting and retaining talent in the nonprofit space differs from the private sector. So I have spent over 20 years in the private sector where we built wealth through stock options. And I quickly came to realize that in this new role that the incentives for employees were much, much different. So as a result, to retain people in the nonprofit world, it is even more important to understand where they are in their stage of life and what their motivation is. And so we have to meet that motivation. For example, is, most recently since COVID, some of our team members prefer to work remotely. And so we moved to fully remote workforce. A lot of people really enjoy that flexibility, and moving to this model also has enabled us to look beyond our traditional home area of New York City, which is a very high cost area, and to the entire country, which has enabled us to really tap into a larger pool of passionate, highly skilled team members.
Yeah, what you're saying resonates very positively with nonprofit HR's client community as well. It'd be hard pressed to find an organization that's not either fully virtualized, hybrid, or some other sort of arrangement that offers incredible flexibility for the workforce. Thank you so much for lifting that up. And I also appreciate you mentioning COVID, right? It wasn't that long ago that we were in a pandemic and facing unprecedented times. And today we're still experiencing some of the residuals associated with that moment in time that we all experienced together. How do you personally approach and embrace change, especially in moments of uncertainty? So share any examples of what that looks like, either during the pandemic or after the pandemic.
I'll start off because all of us, I'm sure, fight attrition, right? Like we struggle with how do we retain and attract talent? And COVID presented that organic response. It pressure tested all of our missions and said, oh my gosh, how can we retain talent? As a financial person, of course, I get asked those unsavory questions that I absolutely hate, which is plan A, B, or C scenarios should you had to shut down. And I clearly said to my boss, listen, we've got to dig deeper. We've got to figure out how we can keep the talent that we have, because I believe the situation of COVID will be over. I didn't know then, of course, the world was a little bit more bleak, but you have the presence of mind to find that one glimmer of hope to say, hey, we have to kind of push through this particular change. If we're going to juxtapose that onto the organizations that we have, I just think that's really key. And I wanted to add that.
I think about change a lot. I think that I am pre-wired to embrace the possibilities. And I know that everybody is not, but I kind of grew up being told that, I could always be worse. Think about the possibilities. What could this moment introduce that you didn't have in the past? Building off of what Aisha was talking about with COVID, I think for all of us, it really was a punch in the gut around what we're really dealing with here. Big picture, the pandemic aside, we have some really heavy things to fix. And, for our organization, when we're thinking about, in the 70s when I was born, since then, obesity rates for kids have tripled. 27 million kids in our country do not have access to a park. Our work is on Black and Brown communities. And in Black and Brown communities, the parks are 2 to 3 times smaller and 5 times as crowded. And we have a system that is not going to change anything quick. And so when I think about embracing change and going back to that why, I really like to make sure that our organization understands that it's necessary. Sometimes change is absolutely necessary, because if we keep going on the status quo, we will not have women leaders. We will not have a future that's better than our past. We will not be able to be innovative or dynamic in how we solve problems. We will not advance as humanity. And so when I think about leading people through change, I truly do like to ground us on the why. And, let's not change unnecessarily. Let's make sure that we build on top of what's working, but let's also acknowledge that some things just aren't working. And for us during the pandemic, I think the big wake up call, and I'll say this really on behalf of the sector, is that so much of us live in a trap where we are reliant on resources and funding to come to the table to tell us where we need to work. And we all are putting our lives into solving these problems. And yet we're so limited in how we can solve the problems because we're waiting for resources to really get ourselves organized to do it. And when that pandemic hit us, we're building public space, right? We're bringing volunteers together and building playgrounds, and none of those could be done. And our big wake up call was, let's get out the trap. Let's, really figure out what resources need to be in place to solve our problem. If our mission is to end place-based inequity for good, we want to see vibrant communities, happy, healthy kids, we're doing it wrong. We'll just keep building one playground at a time, and that will be beautiful for those kids and those families and caregivers that we connected with. We're not going to fix the underlying issues, and we will never solve the problems unless we change.
If I think about all 4 of your missions, you all indirectly or directly are addressing the wealth gap. You're addressing, inequities in many different ways, lack of access, and some of the most important and critical challenges facing our society. I want to make sure that I acknowledge the connection that I see between all of your missions, and you know how great it is to be on a call with all of you to capitalize on each other's messaging and responses to these questions, because it's making for an even richer conversation. With what we've gone through, what we've seen is the need for our people to feel as if they're being invested in, that they are being heard, that they are in an organization that has fostered a strong sense of belonging for them. We've seen policies challenged, overhauled altogether. We've seen new benefits emerge out of necessity for the workforce to make sure that they are relevant. My next question has to do with resilience. How can leaders foster a culture of resilience within their organizations, particularly during those periods of transition?
As a leader, how are you modeling resiliency around your own self-reflection and around how you are leading yourself through change? My big learning through the pandemic and, working for a food bank that is serving at the peak double what we were pre-pandemic. I mean, that takes a lot of personal resiliency and team resiliency. How do you continue to foster that resiliency? Actually, by slowing down, leading yourself to really not confuse being busy with being effective and charging forward without slowing down. So what I've challenged myself to do, particularly in the last year, to build a culture of resiliency, is to actually be more stringent about doing less in order to do more. And that's been hard. It's been hard, but I'm finding that if I don't actually book in time to practice my own self-reflection, to feel all the things I'm feeling, to notice and name them and then put them aside, I'm not going to be effective in building resiliency in myself. And then to create the space to listen to the hard conversations, to uncover the solutions that exist within my team. So for me, building resiliency within an organization starts with resiliency practice for myself.
I kind of grew up with a tough it out mentality, like you got it, you can adapt, you can do all the things. I've really been meditating on the idea of resiliency recently. And what does resiliency need to look like now? And we're talking about all of these things that we're putting in place for our people. And I think that there's a new definition to resiliency that we should consider that is really about not trying to tough it out or, even the self-care piece. It's that we need each other, that if we think about resiliency in terms of our relationship with others, we're not going to have the answers. We're going to need to pause. And that's where we need to rely on others to tag in.
Yeah.
And so really having that community, whether it's individual, like your girlfriends or your peers or your team, or it's your organization building partnerships with other organizations that can step in the gap, that we really need to think about redefining that word resiliency.
You all are also supporting organizations, employers who also have their own people to lead, and they need resources as well. What does that look like for you?
The resilience actually is one of our 5 core values. We have to lead by example. Resilience begins at the top. As the head of a nonprofit, we demonstrate through actions and decisions, challenges are opportunities for learning and growth. So really show grace under pressure and maintain a clear vision, even when the path is uncertain. And I encourage my team to build a supportive network in difficult times, really encourage mentoring, peer support groups within the organization, and share experience and wisdom. And it can be really powerful tool for individuals and team to learn resilience from each other. And there are times you just step up on acknowledging the hard work, dedication of team members, especially during challenging times, because recognition reinforces a positive outlook and encourage really positive attitude. And Lysa, you mentioned about self-care and well-being. It's really very important to spend time on to make on yourself well-being and maintain flexibility, like be open to pivoting strategies and trying new approaches when you get stuck in difficult times. And a resilient organization is the one that can swiftly adapt the course of action in response to evolving circumstance. I always like to tell a personal story, a story I often talk about when it comes to embracing change and maintain resiliency is my migration to America from China with nothing more than a suitcase, and $1,000 in my pocket to pursue my American dream. And journey included some really steep learning curves, including American culture that was like completely different opposed to the culture I came from, learning second language and updating my communication style to be able to really participate in corporate America. And shortly after arriving in this country, I came to a swift realization that success in America would require stepping out of my comfort zone, be resilient, specifically moving beyond my reluctance to speak up, to actively seek help and willing to learn from others. So definitely lived through a various degree of uncertainty and upheaval and build up that resilience along the way.
Thank you so much, Ying, for that. Thank you for sharing a portion of your story with us as well, and for helping us to understand your lived experience and what resilience means to you. I think one of the things that was, a real challenge for leaders throughout COVID was communicating to their people. How did you all create some pillars of communication for yourself to not only help yourself move through what was occurring from a change perspective, but also to help your employees know that you were at the helm in partnership with them, making sure that they had what they needed and that your organization did as well?
I'll jump in here, and I want to be delicate but intentional with this question, maybe even a little personal, because I think communicating any change in the organization, especially as it related to COVID, kind of brought to the fore some innatenesses that we all have. I think that as a woman, there's a certain rigor and grace that we lead with, and I think that definitely gets called to the fore a lot when we deal with that. I'm hyper aware that, as a leader, I'm being watched. And I don't, of course, want to be hyper reactive, but I want to definitely be proactive. And when we talk about the social change that happened, particularly with the unfortunate events around George Floyd, not only did it bring our mission into clear focus, but it also brought to the fore a lot of anxieties that people personally felt. And I think what happens in a situation like that, because we're home, we're watching the news, and of course, we're still working, you're worried about your job, you're worried about all the injustices, you want to kind of tap into what's going on and what's kind of brought to the table, and for myself, I've kind of adopted this North Star mentality, right? What I do personally is I just anchor down, because I know that if I'm okay, then I know my team members will be okay. And I'm also just super honest. I think that we work with professionals every day, and I think they can tell if you're kind of giving them the corporate, spiel about what's going on, but it's getting deeply honest about, hey, this is what's going on, and this is how you communicate that and the goals that you do. Of course,
I have a quick follow-up question for you, because one of the things in your role as Chief Financial Officer, for all of your roles as Executive Director or CEO, is to also address that concept of financial transparency. Do you have any feedback on that, and anything to offer to our listeners to help them understand how you navigate when there is a need to communicate sensitive information that has a financial component to it, and what you use as pillars for that as well?
Thank you for that question. And that's always a very tough situation to do, I have to say. But how I communicate that is I'm just an honest person. I think that has worked for me throughout my career. I'm a straight shooter. I used to walk into, even before this situation kind of happened, kind of in junior roles. And I used to say to my boss, who was, the CFO that I was reporting to, why don't you just tell them what it is? I think people will respond and respect more if you're telling the truth. Now, of course, there's management decisions that not everybody needs to know. But how we particularly navigated that was, I said to my boss, I said, we need to have kind of a state of the union where we kind of put together what we're doing. Part of my just core duties, of course, is managing liquidity, which is, I'm not going to nerd out on this forum to say, but when that situation hits, I think it's important to let people know what you know now. Our message that I helped lead with was telling our staff, we are okay. We have provisions in place to do this, and paint also the hard realities for what the next steps will do. I didn't say we're okay, and then I was just painting a glimpse story for people to glom onto that reality. But I always said we would readdress this in 3 months, and I actually incorporate kind of that financial literacy throughout every staff meeting that we have. So they're attuned to what we have going on, how good we're doing, how bad we're doing, things like that. And I think that every financial person within any institution, in my opinion, should lead from that space of honesty and letting them know, hey, this is where we are. And you get those hard questions where people will say, am I going to get, I mean, quite blatantly, people are going to say, am I going to get fired? And the honest question is, I don't know. But what I do know now is no, communicating that, ostensibly throughout that particular time and space.
Yeah, thank you so much, Aisha. And I saw a few of you perk up when we started talking about financial transparency. Anybody else want to add to that?
I can add a little something to that. Just really quick. That transparency is so important because the lack of communication is where time and time and time again, we experience things falling apart, the unknown. And one thing that we put into place this past year is just a more disciplined reporting approach. So, we've got annual goals, we've got strategic plans, all of those things, but we have a monthly report that we share with all staff. We present it during our all staff meeting. Everyone can click on the link and see the full report, but it really outlines everything about our progress that month. And so really putting the information in individuals' hands so that they can have access to it, I think is important. And then our CFO does do our report out, a more in-depth kind of, here's the state of things. Do you have any tough questions? Every 3 months. That transparency that Aisha's talking about is important, but also finding other mechanisms just to build transparency into the system so that there's always access.
I just want to add to all of this. And within our food bank, we have a number of transparent dashboards. Our strategic plan with KPIs is visible to anybody with the link. And also, information might lead to more confusion. More information does not always mean more transparency. Continually to be clear about what is happening and why. What do we know? What do we not know? What is tethering us as we move forward is a continual challenge. And we're living this in real time. Food banks across America are experiencing food insecurity increasing. In the state of California, food insecurity is higher this year than it was in 2020. Child poverty has doubled since 2022. So we're experiencing even greater needs since the pandemic, even in the midst of all of those pandemic era supports going away. So it is a tremendously challenging time. How are we moving through it? It's hard. So continuing to be clear about where we're going and why, and the how we get there is part of the team conversation, and it is ongoing. But as leaders, what I'm feeling inspired by is that all of us are ready to enter into those hard conversations, that we are grounded by our values, that we are committed to uplifting our communities, our teams, and ourselves. And I'm just feeling grateful and energized and ready to do more.
Yeah, thanks. And I saw you come off mute as well, Ying. Did you have something to offer for that?
Yeah, so for a while, we were focusing on communicating to our stakeholders because we serve our corporate members, MBEs, and regional councils. And sometimes we forget to communicate to our employees. So until one of our team members being there for over 40 years. And she said, I'm tired of being the last person to know what's going on. So kind of woke us up like, wait, we need to really enhance our communication with our team members. So the effective communication during times of change is really about what you're talking about, clarity and transparency, authenticity and empathy. And sometimes you can deliver the bad news, be yourself, and people actually don't sugarcoat it. People will receive better. And I always, try to articulate the clear vision of the end goal and outlining the steps we will take together to get there. And to your point, to share the rationale behind changes and regular updates, open forum. We host transformation office hours, for example, so people can call in and ask questions. And we have a transformation hub on our website. It's open to anyone, so people can go out there and to check out what's the latest. And also, I shared earlier that motivation is maintained throughout the change by celebrating small wins on the way to our larger objectives. So ensuring that every team member sees the value of their contribution to our shared goals. So this approach not only keeps the team focused, but also strengthening our collective resolve to succeed no matter what changes come our way.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Ying. Really appreciate it. Just have a couple quick more questions. The first one is, can anyone share an example of how change has led to innovation or growth within your professional journey or for your organization?
Change and transformation have been everything for us. And I mentioned it earlier. We're 25 years old and we have been doing great work for all of that time. Never in any way would we be able to solve the problem that we exist for if we didn't change and transform. In 2021, we went from building one playground at a time to building out a measurement and evaluation function that can tell us where place-based inequity is. And then that becomes our roadmap for the work. We didn't have that before. There was no measurement and evaluation team. Let's influence policy and our federal and state and local government decisions by building out public policy team who can focus on that work, because we're not going to solve the problem on our own. And so we built that team out. And now we've moved from an organization that's going into the community, doing excellent work and coming out of community, and maybe we'll be back again to build another place space, maybe not, to building partnerships with our critical local systems like parks, like schools, and saying, hey, let's assess the entire system and look at where we need to work. And once we have that roadmap, let's lock arms and figure out how to get the resources to solve the problem. And now, instead of doing one project with Oakland Unified School District, we're doing 8 this year, and we'll do probably another 8 next year. But really, we're biting it off fast so that we can affect this generation of kids. Had we not changed, had we not recognized where our missing puzzle pieces were and invested in them, we would not be able to have half a chance of achieving our mission, or we wouldn't transform. So for us, like, embracing change has been everything. And that was really with the why, like going back to where we started before, like, why are we doing this? Are we doing this to bring volunteers together, or are we doing this to solve a problem? If we're doing this to solve a problem, we got some changes to make.
Thanks so much for that, Lysa. Anyone else like to chime in on that? I see you come off, Tanis.
The food bank is moving through incredible transformation, moving from pandemic era crisis response into transforming and questioning, how are we ending hunger? That's our mission. Our mission isn't to manage hunger, it's to end it. So moving from a network that's disconnected to one that's connected, moving from this idea that pantries have to be once a week for 3 hours to a vision in which we are offering full choice, multiple days, and connecting folks to a range of supports. So what we envision is nourishing food of one's choosing, uplifted by a network of support. That's a whole lot different than old style food banking of the early 1980s. That's what we're moving towards. That takes a lot of change. It takes partnering with the community differently. It takes different policies. It takes different competencies. We are in the thick of that change now. So I'm going to move back to what I shared earlier in the conversation, which is a lot of people want change, but the change has to start with ourselves. It has to start with each of us as leaders. It has to start with questioning how we're showing up, how we're learning, how we're continually showing up with our own growth mindset, listening for where the conversations are the hardest, for where we can grow the most, because all of us in this journey to create the change that we want in the community has to start with being open to continually changing ourselves.
Wow, Tanis, I mean, you really started answering the last question that I have. What advice do you offer individuals or organizations struggling to navigate change, not only today, but the change of tomorrow?
I'll start with that. To any individual or organization finding themselves grappling with the challenges of change, whether it's personally or professionally, remember what we talked about earlier, resilience is born from community and a connection. So it's very important to realize that success, it's not a lonely journey. Every person who has made strides in their field has faced obstacles, and more often than not, and has overcome them with the support of others. A lot of time people say, I'm self-made person. And I said, I don't believe the term called a self-made person, because you actually, along the way, you actually get support of others to get you through these challenging times. My first piece of advice would be to cultivate a supportive network. This doesn't mean only reaching out in times of need, but also building relationships that provide mutual growth, seeking out coaches and mentors who resonate with your value and are where you aspire to be. And their guidance can be really a beacon during times of uncertainty. And also be open to vulnerability. Be open to vulnerability is also key. It can be daunting to show struggle in front of folks, especially when you're CEO. But in my experience, it's in those moments of honesty and vulnerability, true bonds are formed. When you're transparent about your struggles and challenges, you invite others to share their wisdom and their strength with you. And sometimes they extend their helping hands and their relationship to you to help you get through it. Moreover, when facing a professional standstill, rather than viewing it as a setback, approach it as a moment to pause and reevaluate. Sometimes the best way forward is really take a step back and seek advice and reassess your path. Remember, closed doors often lead us to paths we might never have considered, and revealing opportunities that are perhaps more aligned with our journey. So above all, understand that's okay to ask for help, and which is not what I was trained growing up in China, but I learned after I migrated to this country. An act of seeking assistance is a testament to really your commitment to move forward and to know that growth is a really collaborative effort with others who can help you. And the doors you are looking to open are often unlocked by hands of those who have walked before you. So ask for help.
And if I might just add a small anecdote, because I know we've, unpacked a lot. Our whole team management mentality is that we are one band and one sound. And so we just did this now. And so we're going through this iterative process.
Aisha, thank you. Tanis, I see you've come up.
I just want to, I love one band, one sound. That is great. I'm going to reclaim the word struggling. So your question was, what's the advice to anyone struggling through change and transition? I just want to take that word and own it. I'm struggling through change. Because if I'm not struggling through change, I'm not paying attention to what am I rumbling with? What's challenging for me? What do I need to reflect on? And if I'm not struggling with something, I'm not thinking about what my team is experiencing and what they're challenging and what I need to pay attention to. So I just want to claim that word and be okay with it, because I think we all need to be struggling with something in order to be paying attention to what our team is needing and what our community needs of us next. It's okay to struggle.
Yeah, thank you for lifting that up. Lysa.
I took a bunch of notes. One band, one sound. My senior team will be hearing that tomorrow, by the way. Talk about learning. I just echo everything. I think I'll lean into the individual side, because it's probably individuals watching or listening to this is, if you're struggling, it's okay to slow down. It's really okay just to slow down and say, hold on, let me reset and look at the lay of the land here. And this would apply to an organization as well, that, if you're going too fast and you are moving at a pace that is probably causing you to make some decisions that aren't in your best interest or the organization's best interest, it's time to slow down, and that's okay, because that's when you start to get the real answers for what needs to happen next. I've done that in my personal journey, and I think, quite frankly, that's how I've landed where I am today. Is there's been big moments of struggle where I just questioned, do I belong here? Am I doing the right work? What am I doing with my life? I'm really struggling with this. And in those moments, the stillness is what provides the answers. I offer that just to any individual who's struggling. You can apply it to your organization as well.
Wow, thank you all so very much. There are a few things that I heard you all say in this last question. And as we wrap up, I heard take a step back, right? It's okay to step back so that you can step forward. I heard closed doors, right? But there's always someone that's on the other side that's opening that door, and that each and every one of us, even on this call, someone opened doors for us throughout our career. I heard ask for help. I heard that it's okay to slow down. I heard own the struggle. I heard that I am struggling through the change, and that's okay. And that we can redefine the whole concept of struggle and make it what it needs to be for us. I heard one band, one sound. I think that should be the name of this episode. One band, one sound. So we're taking that, Aisha. We're going to own that. Yeah. And then I heard stillness is where the answers come to us. We can find those answers in moments of stillness that we give to ourselves. And I thank you all so much for giving us some time today. Nonprofit HR, thanks each and every one of you. We salute you and the incredible work that you and your people are doing. Your missions make a difference, and we need those missions in this world and in this society.
That's our show for today. I hope you are inspired after listening to this conversation. Thank you for listening to The Switch. If you're looking for more episodes, please visit nonprofithr.com/The Switch. There you can access recordings and resources to help your organization maximize its greatest asset, your people.